All right, welcome to Film Nerds. As always, I'm your host James, and joined with me today is none other than
Herman,
Herman
yeah.
Herman Hunt.
Yes, sir.
AKA the Voice.
I keep getting that nickname. Yeah,
uh, I'm gonna make it stick.
yeah. I hope it does. I don't mind that nickname. I don't mind that nickname at all.
I still remember that. Oh, uh, but the reason why we are here today is we're gonna be talking about our top five favorite movies of the past decade.
Mm-hmm.
And for those at home who don't know what a decade is, that's 10 years. So we start with 2009, 2019.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I guess this also be time for y'all who are stuck at home
Yeah,
during this quarantine.
yeah,
Check out some of these movies.
yeah,
You know,
yeah. A lot of mine are, well, with the exception of one. Unfortunately, mine are a little, they were the bigger budget ones, with the
mm-hmm.
exception of one movie. But yeah, I think that while everybody is stuck at home due to the pandemic, um, I have at least one movie and a couple of TV shows that I greatly enjoyed that are very binge worthy. But my top five movies and TV shows of the decade is something that I was actually thinking about on my way over here. What I find interesting is that when I think that this pandemic, this virus,
Mm-hmm.
with everybody sitting at home, a lot of the things that we took for granted, like being able to go to movies,
Yeah.
being able to go outside. I
Mm-hmm.
think that when they're able to eventually, hopefully, get this pandemic under control, I think that people, at least for a short period of time, will appreciate those things even more. So
Hopefully.
yeah, hopefully, just appreciate the nuanced little things that we're able to do: hug people,
Mm-hmm.
walk outside, being able to go to movies.
Shake hands.
Yes, yeah, all of that. We'll be able to, appreciate that a little bit more. But until we get to that point,
Mm-hmm.
everybody is stuck inside. So
Well, at least almost everybody.
yeah,
Yeah.
well,
You know,
certain people
we
can't.
since we were at UPS,
Yeah,
we are still open. You know.
yeah, and I guarantee they are not respecting the 6 foot in between the people rule because they do not care.
No, they do not.
But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, yeah. But today we here to talk about movies and provide y'all with hopefully some good content.
Hmm.
Um, but let's get into it. So, what's first on your list?
My list, it was for me, it was hard to narrow down five movies because the last 10 years have been filled with some very, very good films.
Yes.
I think in the last 10 years, streaming services such as Amazon, Netflix,
Mm-hmm.
Hulu, they stepped their game up. Netflix released some very good films. You had Beasts of No Nation. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, you had their TV shows like Stranger Things, and Amazon released The Big Sick. Um, the movie that Shia LaBeouf was in, Honey Boy. They have been stepping their games. The streaming game has been stepping their game up in terms of movies.
Yes.
But I think that the first movie that most definitely had to be on my list was Inception.
Oh, you took mine.
Ince- Inception was the
Mm-hmm.
first movie on my list because I remember my mother, who has a huge love of film like me. My mother, she went to go see it,
Mm-hmm.
and I had no interest at first because at that particular time I associated Chris Nolan with Batman. So if he wasn't making a Batman movie, I didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
And so my mother goes to see this movie. She's like, this movie was amazing, and she went to go see it again. And I didn't pay attention until fast forward it's released on DVD, and we rent it, and I look at it, and I'm like, whoa, this movie was insane. Like one of the things, aside from the fact that it's literally probably the only movie I like Leonardo DiCaprio in, and I'm gonna get a lot of hate for that. I'm not a big Leo fan.
Mm-hmm.
I really am not. I don't like him like that. But this is like one of the few roles I really loved him in. Aside from the acting, which is top notch and superb, the story, the practical effects, the fact that one, like for instance, the one scene towards the end with the revolving room with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, that was not CGI, that was all practical.
Yes.
Um,
Like for those who know, they built a set
yes,
that actually rotated,
yes,
whatnot. You know.
yes. They built a set that rotated. It was such a dope film. It introduced me to Tom Hardy because before this movie, I had no idea who he was. So it introduced me to Tom Hardy, um, reintroduced me to Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I just first. So I guess the first thing I really appreciated about the movie was the style of it.
Mm-hmm.
It was stylistically it was so superb because the costume design I really liked. And I'm gonna use Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character as an example, who in my opinion was the most stylish person in the movie.
True.
Joseph Gordon-Levitt's suit game was A1. I
It
want to
was.
know who the costume designer was because I've always thought that ever since like 10 Things I Hate About You and Third Rock from the Sun, Joseph Gordon-Levitt has always had that angsty, awkward feel
Mm-hmm.
about him. And so you take this somewhat, with respect, somewhat scrawny actor, and then you put him in this movie, and like his suit game is just like his everything he's wearing is stylish. He has an aura about him in the movie. Christopher Nolan took this actor and just completely 360 how I viewed him,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of that comes from his costume design. Like there's a scene in the movie where he's talking with Ellen Page's character, and he's showing her because they're inside the dream, and he's showing her the revolving steps,
Mm-hmm.
and just I'm weird like this. The little things that I pick up on, the fact that the costume designer put him in a pastel shirt with the brown suit jacket, vest, black pants, and then button spat boots. Just the way everything was bespoke, it fit him perfectly. He looked dope. He was by far the dopest looking character in the movie to me. So to start things off, I did love the costume design. Of course, Leonardo DiCaprio looked good in the movie. He Leonardo DiCaprio's suit game was pretty tight. Um, let's see, Ken Watanabe, Tom
Mm-hmm.
Hardy, Ellen Page, everybody just looked clean in the movie. So the style of the movie was very polished, very clean, but not in a pretentious way, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. It was just a very polished and clean movie. And then the second thing that I liked about it was the writing, because in the beginning of the movie, it's pretty much set up that they're inside of as the story goes along, you see that they're inside a dream. But then as it progresses, it's a dream within a dream.
Mm-hmm.
And so then it's quickly established that Leonardo DiCaprio, he practices espionage, but it's a very different type
Right. Mm-hmm.
of espionage. And it was, for me, this was just it was so off the wall because it felt like the Matrix minus all of the over the top stylized action.
Mm-hmm.
It was very grounded in its in it.
Which is weird to say because it deals with
Yeah,
dreams.
yeah.
You know.
But it was grounded fantasy. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what, like, whereas you look at the Matrix got a little more bombastic and a little more over the top and all over the place as the series progressed.
Uh-huh.
This movie really kept its fantasy grounded. It had the fantasy element inside the
Yeah.
dream. It had fantastical elements and fantastical scenes, but it was still grounded. It
Yeah.
wasn't it wasn't over the top, and yet it was still visually stunning. So what I love is that Chris Nolan, Jonathan Nolan, and his wife, when they were writing the script, they found that balance. They found that grounded that grounded fantasy to play in,
Yeah.
which I really loved, and I loved the story. I,
which is one reason why I always love Christopher Nolan's movies.
mm-hmm,
Because like, even though his movie, well, a lot of his movies tends to deal with sci-fi, time,
mm-hmm,
things of that nature,
mm-hmm,
he finds a way to still keep it connected on a much grounded level.
yeah,
Where, especially when you look at his Batman movies,
mm-hmm,
how it's stuff that, well, this could happen,
mm-hmm,
even though we all know
mm-hmm,
no it can't,
mm-hmm,
but it feels as if something like this can be
yeah,
in real life.
yeah, it does. It's it it. I just the fact that, and then when you go deeper into the story, and Leonardo DiCaprio plays this character so well. A really a tortured soul who can't
Mm-hmm.
he the only thing he wants is to get back to his
With
kids.
kids.
He can't get to his kids. The And what I love about the story is Chris Nolan he pulls it back layer by layer, like
Mm-hmm.
the onion. You don't know what happened to his wife. You don't know all of what happened to his wife. All you know is that his wife is gone, but you don't know why.
Yeah.
And as the story progresses, you see that because this is something that he continuously played with, and then they went into this dream, and he messed up because he messed with her mind, and because of that, he planted a seed that grew into something terrible, to the point where she could not differentiate the dream from the
Reality.
reality. But what really tripped me up was the fact that she had herself declared sane by 5 psychiatrists.
Mm-hmm.
She planted evidence that made it seem like he was abusing her. He she made it to where he literally had no choice. Either you die with me, or in what she believed to be the dream, in this dream, it, you're not going to be able to live here anymore. She put him in a corner, but at the same time, while you feel sorry for him, another side of you was like, well, you brought this on yourself
Yeah.
because you played with her mind. So he plays this tortured character. He cannot control, because he loves her so much. He can't control his memories of her. So her memories are wreaking havoc inside of his mind.
Yeah.
Everywhere he goes, just wreaking havoc. So I and unfortunately I forget the actress's name that played his wife in the film.
Uh,
She was great in the role, though.
she was.
She was very good in the role. So her let's see, her name is Marion Cotillard.
Yeah.
And Marion Cotillard played his wife. I remember when my mother came from the movie, seeing it the first time, she was like, she is sinister. Like, she is like really sinister. Like she is evil. And I was like, I didn't I didn't get it at first, but as the film progressed, you see that she has a really dark, mischievous nature. She's just
Mm-hmm.
sabotaging everything. Um, I loved Tom Hardy's
Kind of
character.
like the Crazy Ex.
Yes, yes. Except Leonardo DiCaprio had no other love interest.
Yeah.
It was just her. And I loved, like I said, I loved Tom Hardy's portrayal in this movie. He didn't have a big role, but I did love how I loved his his subtle performance, the jabs, and how him and Joseph Gordon-Levitt go back and forth with one
Mm-hmm.
another. I loved that he was the grifter. He was the one that disguised himself. I loved how the story, and it went from being the espionage film to a heist film towards the end of the movie. But unlike Ocean's 11, or the now the new Fast and Furious movies, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of, Ocean's 11 dealt with, I would say, off the cuff, dry, nuanced humor.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Fast and Furious movies dealt with over the
The top.
top, unrealistic action. This movie, once again, going back and finding that balance, there was humor. There were moments where you could laugh, but it wasn't over the top. There was a time and a place for everything, and everything had its proper place. The humor had its proper place.
Mm-hmm.
The story and the characters were always in the center, which is what I loved. The spectacle of the movie did not overtake the characters. You had big set pieces, but they did not overtake the central story, which was this man trying to get back to his family.
Yeah,
Didn't overtake it.
because a lot of movies tends to have these big set pieces and big action pieces, and that's all you can remember in the movie. You know, because that's what they put all the focus on, like the Fast and Furious movies. You know?
And I love that, and I love that no character got lost. It felt, at least to me, this is my opinion, but it didn't feel like any character got lost in the narrative. They didn't get lost in the story. Every character had their place. Tom Hardy did his job. Ellen Page was there to keep Leonardo DiCaprio's character on balance, to keep the balance. She was the architect, so she knew what he was going through. She had a purpose. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's character had a purpose. Even Yusuf, the gentleman that was creating the chemical, the medicine of the chemical in order to keep them under, he had a purpose. Every single person in the movie had a purpose. Some purposes were bigger than others, but everybody had a place. Everybody had a job, and nobody got lost. Even Cillian Murphy's character, he had a purpose. You felt for his character, and he wasn't. And it's like he. I guess if there was to be an antagonist, maybe no, he wasn't the antagonist. Marion Cotillard was the antagonist. So I felt for everyone.
Yeah, even though it kind of plays as if he is the antagonist a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, but towards the end of the movie, you realize, he's actually a piece of the puzzle.
Yes, he's a piece of it, but he's a piece of the puzzle that you feel for, because towards the end of the movie, what I thought was awesome is, yes, the overall point of the heist is for him to break up his company, but the characters also helped him. So Cillian Murphy's character, even though he wasn't a big character, he had an arc. He went from being resentful of his father because he felt his father didn't love him. They planted a very positive idea that affected his character positively in the future. Now he believes that his father always cared for him, and his father always wanted him to build something for himself. So not only do you break up the company, but you make this man better. So everybody had a positive ending, and I love how Chris Nolan was able to grab each piece of the spider web and connect them, and everybody, nobody had a negative ending. Nobody had a negative ending, and I really like that about his narrative. It's not, I can be cynical and poke holes in it, but this is one of the films where I don't want to do that, and I probably never will do it. This is one of those movies where it was so good. If there are problems, you purposely ignore them. Like you don't want to focus on the problems. This was just a quintessence. It was a wonderful film. It has me very much looking forward to Tenet that comes out later on this year, because it seems like it's in the same vein. So yeah, my number one movie was Inception, but now I'm gonna throw it to you. What was? I know I took Inception.
Yes.
So I'm gonna throw it to you.
Inception was my number one, which for those who've been listening would know, Inception is my favorite movie of all times. So I guess since you already used Inception, I'm not gonna throw that out there. I'll go with a movie that actually came out a couple months ago, and that we actually did a review on, Parasite.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay, yeah.
It won Best Picture, whatnot, and for those, well, it is a Korean film, which is not accustomed for a foreign film such as Parasite to win Best Picture over here in America.
Yeah, it was the first Korean film to win Best Picture, if I believe.
Yes.
Was it? Yeah.
Yes. And it is. I feel like it deserved Best Picture. Even though yes, it's not in English, it is subtitled, but I feel like it didn't take away from the movie. Some folks is picky about that.
I like that. I like that they didn't compromise.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, I'm going to. They were like, we're going to make this film authentic to our language and to
Mm-hmm.
our culture.
Yes.
And what I like is that I think the one thing that everybody agrees on, despite the fact that no, it's not dubbed, it's in their natural language. Uh, the greatness of the story and the quality of the movie,
Mm-hmm.
it's that good, and it's able to convey to everybody regardless of the fact that you can't understand the language.
Yes. You know, and like I love the dark humor of the movie,
Mm-hmm.
the 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 whole the thrill,
Mm-hmm.
especially towards the end of the movie, it goes from being this uh dark comedy drama
Mm-hmm.
to a thriller.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but it does it uh naturally.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like especially when I compare it to the Type Perry movie. I forget the name of it. The one,
For colored girls,
the one that this came out. Oh, Far from Grace.
Fall from Grace.
Like Far from Grace kind of does the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Where beginning the movie, it's one thing, then at the end it has a whole new tone switch.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like in Far from Grace, it wasn't earned. You know, it came out way left field.
Mm-hmm.
But in Parasite, I feel like it seemed natural. You know,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you look at everything that's going on,
Mm-hmm.
and it felt like the way the director made the movie, like it just felt like that was the natural course
Mm-hmm.
where the family was gonna lead anyways, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and like from the acting to the writing, everything just felt uh, strong, you know, like especially the acting and like I feel like everyone did a solid job. You know, it was no over the top like a lot of films especially with these characters in the story, like it's easy to have those characters to be a little bit over the top, but I like how they was able to mesh well with each other and kept it subtle. If you know, if I can say that or not,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but it's like overall, I just really love this movie. You know, like and yeah, like it definitely deserved the best picture. You know, especially over the Irishman.
You know what?
I did not like.
I I think that, and this is with respect to the great Martin Scorsese, because I do love Martin Scorsese's films. I think Raging Bull is my all time favorite Martin Scorsese film. And I've loved his films. Goodfellas. Uh, my second, because I mean we could go on a tangent about him all day, because
Mm-hmm.
I love Gangs of New York. I love Raging Bull. Goodfellas is a good movie.
The Departed.
The Departed is a very good movie. Um, but The Irishman I feel like that was a movie that just I don't like. I don't know if that. It felt like a love letter to those three specific actors. It felt like a love letter, because I read somewhere Robert De Niro is going to retire from acting. Joe Pesci, I don't know if he wants to continue doing this, and of course you had the great Al Pacino in it. But it felt like these three titans of gangster movies. It felt like a love letter to them. It's like it's a send off. It's like you remember them. You remember Joe Pesci from Goodfellas and Casino, and of course Robert De Niro from Taxi Driver, Raging Bull, Godfather. The Goodfellas, all of them. Of course Al Pacino, Godfather, Scarface. The great gangsters of the past. You remember them from that. We're gonna give them a farewell, a swan song. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. And admittedly, I have not seen it yet, mostly due to the fact that I cannot bring myself to sit 3 hours.
And a half.
It's 3.5 hours?
Three and a half.
No, I can't do it. I can't do
Yes.
it. I can't bring myself to sit 3.5 hours to look at this movie. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I just don't have the time.
Well, me and my friend Alex, we did a review on the movie, whatnot, and yeah, neither one of us cared for the movie.
I figured it was not for people in our age bracket. I think it was for people, in my opinion, I think it was for a certain demographic, maybe an older demographic that really enjoyed Martin Scorsese's type of films, his type of narrative storytelling. For people that really enjoyed that type of storytelling, they would enjoy this movie. Um, but yeah, no, I couldn't. I could not bring myself to look at that. I couldn't do it. I can't do it. But I now my second my second favorite movie of the decade. Um, I don't know if this movie got a lot of exposure. So this is the little movie on my list. This movie was brought to my attention by one of my best friends, close friend of mine, Eric. And Eric brought this to my attention, and it's called Sing Street. So Sing Street came out in 2016,
Mm-hmm.
and I have, and I get this from my mom. I have a lot of love for 80s alternative rock bands. So I love the Smiths. Um, I love I love Duran Duran. We're gonna take it back to America.
Mm-hmm.
Hall and Notes and all of that stuff. This is a movie that pays homage to that era. So this movie takes place in the 80s, and it takes place in let's see if I remember correctly. It takes place in Ireland. So the movie takes place in Ireland in 1985, and it's a story of this young boy. He's kind of a nerdy kid.
Mm-hmm.
He has an older brother, and to make a long story short, he transfers to a new school. And he befriends a group of kids, and they start a band because he gets exposed to rock and roll. So he sees the Smiths and he sees Duran Duran and he sees all of these rock bands, and so they start making their own music that is inspired from those bands and inspired from that style of music. And what I love about the soundtrack, each song has a different feel. So they make a song that's inspired by the Smiths. They make a song that's inspired by Duran Duran. They make a song that's inspired by Hall and Notes. One song in particular, which is the flagship song of the movie, that's inspired by uh, Hall and Notes song. Let's see. Dang, I do forget the Hall and Notes song. It's playing in my head, but it's this flagship song, "Drive It Like You Stole It." It's a dope song. It's a really it's a really dope song. It's high tempo. They even have a dance sequence in the movie. Um, but what I like is that, once again, the characters are the central point of the story. This boy wants to get with this girl, and I forgot to mention that earlier in the movie, because there's a girl that he likes.
Mm-hmm.
She's promiscuous. She goes to all the parties and stuff, but she's caught his eye. He really wants to get with her. So over the course of the film, he changes his style based on whatever band he happens to be listening to at the time. There's a scene where he kind of has a Boy George look. There's a scene where he has a Duran Duran look. There's a scene where he has a Smiths look. He and his band goes through the styles with him, which is dope. You have sequences where they're practicing songs. He's wearing a long trench coat with the collar pulled up. That's representative of whatever style he's of music he just happens to be listening to at the time. So his style is chameleon like because it changes. And once again, the girl begins to develop an interest in him because she sees he's a talented musician. Now, there's one scene in the movie that is so fire. There's an actor. So the actor Jack Rayner plays his older brother. Jack Rayner, I believe, is an Irish actor, and I like Jack Rayner a lot. He's a really good actor.
Mm-hmm.
So he plays the older brother. He's a cynical older brother. He's the comic relief in the movie, and I think he gives the strongest performance in the film, because there's one scene where him and his brother, and his younger brother's the main character, and they're arguing because I forget what the argument is about, but I do know how it ends,
Mm-hmm.
because the older brother looks at him, and he explains. He explains what, what life was like before the younger brother came along. He was like, and I'm paraphrasing, like, you get to go out here and you get to, play in this band, you get to live out your dream. He was like, now let me explain to you life before you came along. You had two people, and he's talking about his parents, two people that had sex because they were horny for one another. And they ended up getting married, not because they loved one another, but because a baby was coming along. So you got two people that don't love each other and that don't get along. And they had me. And so I had to navigate through all of that. I had to navigate through all of that. And basically, the way he begins this monologue, he was like, he points to a guitar. He was like, you see that guitar over there? I used to play that guitar very well. But what happened was I had to navigate through all of this mental stress of dealing with two people that don't love each other, don't get along, barely care about me. And I had to give up all of that. I cut through that whole field so that you could live comfortably. You could be able to do what you wanted to do, so that you could do whatever you wanted to do. I had to give up what I wanted to do. And his voice and his octave starts building because you can see it's getting to him.
Mm-hmm.
And mind you, he's been a very laid back character this whole movie. He supported his brother the whole time. But this is kind of like the crossroads point in the movie. It seems like the younger brother's about to give up, and so he explains and so as his octave is getting bigger and stronger, he was like so, because his brother basically looks at him as a deadbeat,
Mm-hmm.
or someone who gave up. But he was like, and I know you look at me and you see that. He was like, but once upon a time, I was a effing jet plane, and I was soaring, and I gave all of that up for you. And what I love about that monologue is that you take one character that has just been laid back the entire film. He has supported his brother.
Mm-hmm.
He's helped his brother put these songs together. He's helped his brother with the band. He's been giving him advice. And then finally, he sees his brother complaining about something that is so frivolous and so small. And he was like, are you serious? Everything I've been through. And the whole film, the reason why he's supporting him is because he sees what his brother can become. He sees it. And he's like, you're gonna sit here and sulk? No. After everything I've been through, no. I refuse. And I'm gonna let you have it so that you understand you can't do that. You can't give up. And so I love the acting in this movie. I love the music in this movie. And this movie, and I do want to jump. I want to touch on this because there was a movie that came out like a year ago. It's like Imagine, where I guess I think the movie's called Imagine, where this guy, he wakes up in a world where the Beatles never existed, but he makes but he's making the Beatles music, and it's kind of like you have a lot of movies that pay homage to music and bands. You had Across the Universe that paid homage to the Beatles, and you had this movie Imagine that paid homage to the Beatles. What I love about this movie, it kind of seemed like a movie like Imagine was hitting you over the head with it, with, oh, this is such an influential band, and you see the effect that they had on the world. And this movie doesn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
This movie shows you the effect that this music had on the world, but it doesn't hit you over the head with it. It's natural. You naturally see through the set pieces, through the environment, through the costume design, through the narrative, through how each character changes. You see the effects that these bands had on the world in the 80s. You see the effects that Duran Duran had just by cutting on the TV and everybody's bobbing their head to Hungry Like the Wolf. Or you see the effects that the Smiths had. You see the effects that Hall and Oates had. You see the effects these bands had on the cultural zeitgeist at the time when they were coming out. And that is what I love about it. It doesn't hit you over the head with it. Don't hit you over the head with it. But once again, the characters are the central point. And because the characters stay at the center and everything else, the music, the set pieces, all of that, it's complementing the characters because each character has an arc, it makes it that much better. And it was one of those films where, because I have another friend, his name is Roland. I have another friend. He's not into these type of movies.
Mm-hmm.
He loves Hall and Oates, loves the Doobie Brothers, but he's not he ain't into movies that make him emotionally feel something. It's like if he can avoid those movies, like he. That's not to say that he doesn't like emotional movies, but for those type of films, he prefers to look at them by himself.
Yeah.
But we looked at this as a group, and he was like, "Yeah, no, this movie hit different. It really did hit. We was listening to Duran, Smiths, and Hall and Oates all the way back home, and the soundtrack, and we just sat there and we just marveled at how this movie affected us, how it hit different. And it's not. It wasn't a big film. It didn't get that much exposure. Like it was on Netflix for a time. I don't know if it's still up there, but it hit different. It just hit different, and that's what I loved about the movie, and that's why it's one of my top 5 films because it's one of those movies. It sticks to the bones long after you've looked at it. Yeah. Long after you've looked at it, you just sit there and you're like, huh, I really really love that film. And it's a conversation starter because even when I'm talking with my friends, movie will come up and we could talk about it for just minute upon minute upon minute. We just talk about the little things that we loved about the movie. So Sing Street came out in 2016, was my second favorite movie of the decade.
Now, I guess I would go with another, I guess, a musical piece. This movie came out in 2014 called Whiplash.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
It stars J.K. Simmons.
Oh, yes.
And I want to say Miles Teller.
Yeah, Miles Teller.
Yes, Teller.
This that was the movie. I was like, I ain't trying to mess with J.K. Simmons. that was a white man that terrified me.
Like, yes, like J.K. played an asshole in this movie.
Oh yes.
Like
oh yes.
Like imagine his role at JJ in Spider-Man times 10.
Oh my god! Yeah, no, yeah, yes, yes.
Like this movie is, and like I'm not a musical person myself, but this movie makes you feel and understand what a lot of musicians go through. You know, because J.K. plays this professor who sole purpose in life is to find the next big thing. You know, I forget the names. He says, but his whole thing is you can be the next so and so just by coasting through class and into life. So he intentionally pressures his students, and he gets no one's lack, so Miles Teller's character, he wants to be that next big thing, so he gets, so like he has to work through all this pressure that he's giving him, and at the end of the movie he manages, and I love how they did it, because at one point he does quit, and he runs into J.K. Simmons, I think at a club or dinner or something, and they have this one-on-one talk, whatnot, and he expresses to him how his mindset on what he wanted to do and why he was so hard on him, whatnot, and so he invites him to be part of his band, whatnot, and he tells him that yes, we playing some of the old music that you already know. So he gets on stage and he throws the whole plan out the window.
It's like he doesn't stop. He keeps going.
Yes. Like, and so all the music he playing, he doesn't know, and he's messing up, and he's falling behind, and so like he pretty much is getting embarrassed on stage.
Mm-hmm.
And but J.K. Simmons' character does this on purpose, you know, as a way to get back at him because I forget what happened.
Mm-hmm.
I think they had a fight or something,
Mm-hmm.
So like this was kind of a way to get back at him.
Mm-hmm.
So Miles Teller character ends up walking off stage, but he stops and I guess he had a change of heart, and instead of quitting, he goes back out there and kind of take matters in his own hands,
Mm.
and he starts playing like one of the toughest pieces that there was learning in class, and he kind of said, "Forget what you were doing. We doing this," and he's playing, and all of a sudden, like J.K. Simmons' character is looking at him like, "Oh, you actually doing this," you know. so so they kind of go back and forth of him trying to, I guess, push him a little further, whatnot, and and like Miles that Teller character just blows it out the park, you know, and like that whole sequence was so heavy and emotional,
Mm-hmm.
and as I said, I'm not a musical guy myself,
Mm-hmm.
but it makes you root for the character,
Mm-hmm.
and understand and feel for him.
Yeah, and I'm not a, I'm me. I'm not a big Miles Teller fan myself, but I'm going to tip my hat off to him
Mm-hmm.
because the performance that he gave in that movie it was very much deserving
Yes.
of awards. He put his that I mean when I do remember the scene at the very end where he's playing and the sweat is just coming and his hands and his arms are going and you can see the strain in the veins and and I'm looking at this dude play and I'm like, okay, yeah.
Because I want to say he had to learn how to play. I'm
Mm-hmm.
not too
I
sure.
think he did. I think that he had to learn how to play and I don't know how long he I don't know how long his preparation time was. All
Yeah.
I know is the finished result. It looked painful when he
Yes.
was playing. It looked very painful
Yes.
when he was playing.
Because in one scene during practice, his hands was bleeding.
Mm-hmm.
It looked painful.
Yeah, yeah, and it would that's one of those that's one of those rare performances. Something that's kind of similar to that. I guess would probably be Joaquin Phoenix's Joker performance, where
Mm-hmm.
he like that like his whole laugh thing. It looked like it was physically hurting him to laugh, but he had the condition in the movie, and so you go back to Miles Teller and Whiplash, and it looked painful
Mm-hmm.
what he was doing. So I have, and then JK's performance, because when he's slapping him while practicing, I'm sitting here looking at
Yes.
I'm sitting here looking at the movie like, nah, that wouldn't have happened. We would have been fighting.
Yes.
We would have been fighting. You ain't gonna over here slapping me like that, and then your slaps are getting hard. No, I don't care how good a teacher you are.
Am I rushing or like
Rushing a dragon? Is that what he said? Rushing a dragon?
Yeah.
Are you rushing a dragon? I don't care. We will be fighting if you put your hands on me like that and you slap me like I'm beating it. So JK's evil performance. I got No, I'm with you. My hats go off to that. Both of them put like tremendous effort into those performances.
Because I also think like that wasn't a big, big time movie. I don't think so. Because I didn't catch it in theaters. I caught it on HBO one day
Mm-hmm.
after work. I just came home one day
Mm-hmm.
and I turned it on. I'm like, for some reason, it caught my attention.
Mm-hmm.
But what's your number three?
All right, now my number three, man, I had to put this one up there because this was a very big deal for me.
Mm-hmm.
This was a very, very, very big deal for me. But my number three is Black Panther. So we don't got to go into detail about how culturally huge this movie was. As a huge fan of the MCU, and with it starting in 2009, and you had Iron Man and Captain America came, and you had Thor, and They're putting the Avengers together. As a fan of the comics, I was just waiting. I was like, eventually Black Panther's gonna come in here somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
because I remember from the comics how powerful, how intelligent, how just the presence that the character of T'Challa in Black Panther had when he was first introduced to the Avengers, because he single-handedly beat the Avengers by himself in the comics. So you're talking about this huge character, revolutionary character too, and I'm waiting because I'm just like, eventually I know he's coming. I know he's coming, and he's one of my favorite superheroes of all time. So fast forward to Avengers: Age of Ultron, and it's just a line drop.
Mm-hmm.
But when it was like, oh, it's vibranium,
Yeah.
and I'm like, yeah, yeah, and it was like, where does it come from? And then Mark Ruffalo was like, it comes from Wakanda. I was like, yes, yes, and I was like, he's coming, he's coming, he's coming, he's coming. And when they finally introduced Black Panther in Civil War, I was so, I was more excited for Black Panther than I was for Spider Man. Everybody was losing their minds for Spider Man in Civil War, and rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
Spider Man being in the MCU, he's arguably Marvel's. He's their mascot. He's the flagship character, big character. But when they introduced T'Challa in Black Panther, and it was almost matter of factly, because they didn't really roll the red carpet out for Black Panther. They just released a trailer and he was there, and I was like, oh, all right, yes, yes, all right. I don't care how you bring him in here. He's just here now. And so Black Panther is in the movie, and what I love about when he's first introduced in Civil War, they don't hit you over the head with how powerful he is. You just naturally see it. You naturally see it. He doesn't necessarily overpower everybody. What I love is, we already know from the Winter Soldier movie how powerful Bucky is, how skilled Bucky is, how deadly Bucky is when he's in Winter Soldier mode.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Black Panther is introduced, what I love about Black Panther is he ain't playing no games. He's trying to kill him. So when he's first going up against Winter Soldier, I know a lot of, because I was having conversations, a lot of MCU fanboys, when they first when that scene first released on the internet, they were like, hold up, how can Black Panther keep up with the Winter Soldier? And I'm over here like, well, how can he not? Well, Black Panther would be murdering him. This is I'm over here just going through my mind everything that T'Challa has in the comics, and the way that he fought in Civil War, the way that he carried himself in Civil War, his line delivery, when he's talking to Captain America, and it's like, he's not disrespectful to the captain, but he was like, move, and he's like, I'm not gonna ask you a second time. He made it abundantly clear, this man killed my father, I'm going to kill him, and anyone who stands in my way, y'all will go down with him. I loved Black Panther in Civil War, and then fast forward to the Black Panther movie, and that's when Black Twitter and Black people all in the country, that's when we all lost our minds. But I think the reason why this is my third favorite movie of the decade, just to go to the cultural impact, is really what it represented, because you're talking about black superheroes. Before Black Panther, we really didn't have any on the big screen. And if we did have them, they were comedies. Mm-hmm. So we had Meteor Man and we had Blank Man in the 90s.
Yeah.
And while I love Meteor Man and I love Blank Man, they have a special place in my heart. I love Damon Wayans. I love Robert Townsend. These were comedy movies.
Yeah.
And, then you had, and I always hate this argument. I gotta, just so we're clear to anybody listening. Spawn is not a superhero, and Blade is not a superhero.
They're anti-heroes.
They're at best. They're anti-hero.
Yes.
So when people like, I don't know why everybody's making a big deal about Black Panther. He's not even the first black superhero on screen. No, he is.
Yeah.
Okay. Number one. So we get this out the way. Blade was never billed. He was never billed when Stephen Norrington made Blade back in '98. I believe. So when Blade first came out in '98, that movie was never marketed as a superhero film.
Yes.
That yeah.
I tried. I had this conversation with Theo before,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, Blade was never marketed as a
He was
comic
not.
book movie.
It
No
was
one,
not.
no one but diehards
Yeah.
knew Blade was a comic book movie,
Yeah.
and even still, he's not a superhero.
No, he is not. It was never marketed as a superhero film. It was a R-rated horror thriller action movie. That's how it was marketed. No one knew Blade was a comic book property unless you were a diehard fan. They literally there wasn't they didn't have the Marvel logo thing like they do now for Marvel movies. It literally was just the word Marvel Comics in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, not marketed as a superhero. He's a vampire bounty hunter. And then, as far as Spawn is concerned, literally the only way you know that Al Simmons is black is if you're number one, if you're a diehard Spawn fan, and then number two, if you look at the movie like for the first maybe 15 minutes, and Michael Jai White is in it and he looks normal. Other than that, Spawn's face is covered 90% of the film, and when his face is not covered, he's burned. So there's no way of telling whether this man is white, black, Hispanic, Pakistan. You don't know what he is. So, and once again, not marketed as a superhero.
Yeah.
So this whole argument that they're the first, no, they're not. So going back to Black Panther, not only is he the first black superhero, live action, big budget black superhero. This is a big budget black superhero. This is not something where Hollywood was like, well, we're just gonna test the waters. We're gonna give him his own series, or we're gonna put this on a streaming service, or we're gonna put this on TV. No, Kevin Feige gave him the rollout, just like he gave it to Iron Man, just like he gave it to Thor, just like he gave it to Captain America. And this movie proved that minorities, it proved that black people can make that money, can bring in the box office draw. This movie is one of three solo superhero films in the MCU to make over $1 billion at the box office. I'm sorry, four, because the sequel to Spider-Man made $1 billion too. But so other than Iron Man 3, which made $1 billion, Captain Marvel, which made $1 billion, Black Panther, which is pretty much the granddaddy of them all, because out of all the solo films, it made the most. And then you have Spider-Man Far From Home, which made $1 billion. So you had this movie that made $1 billion at the box office, and just the cultural impact of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that everybody and their mama was buying. And just to put this into context, my mother and my aunt, who don't like superhero films, they do not like superhero films at all. They went to go see this film and they were like, we love this movie. I like the fact that Ryan Coogler, when he directed it, without knocking everybody on the head with racial inequities and what was going on in the country, he made it known what was going on, why King T'Chaka's brother in Jobu was doing what he was doing in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
They made a quality villain. One of the biggest arguments in the MCU was how weak their villains were until recently, with their recent rollout of Thanos and Vulture and Killmongers.
In fact, I think Killmonger, outside of Loki, is the first MCU villain that actually felt like a character.
He did. He felt like what I loved about Killmonger, while you do not agree with his methods, you understand why he's doing what he's doing. You understand why he's doing what he's doing. A lot of people downplayed Chadwick Boseman's performance in the movie. They were like, this movie was about everything except for T'Challa. But what I appreciate, first of all, no movie is perfect. But what I do appreciate is that this movie world build. It built his world. And Chadwick still delivered a strong performance. There was a character arc for him, because in the beginning of the movie, he didn't want to open up his borders. T'Challa wanted to follow the methodology of the kings that came before him. Mm-hmm. He wanted to follow in his father's footsteps. He wanted to keep in line with the principles that they had when they were on the throne. And his meanwhile, his love interest, played by Lupita Nyong'o, was like, no, Wakanda can do so much good for the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the world, and he's like, well, this is not our way. And over the course of the film, he sees the consequences of such narrow-minded thinking. Because of the narrow-minded thinking of his father when he was king, because his father left his cousin in Oakland instead of bringing the boy home, the boy grew up with hatred, and he was resentful, and he became this assassin, this highly intelligent and borderline sadistic killing machine that wanted nothing more than to burn down the old ways, take over Wakanda, and use Wakanda's resources to liberate his people because he was sick and tired of black people being mistreated in
Mm-hmm.
this country. So while T'Challa grew up in royalty, and he grew up to event, and he was groomed to be a king, Killmonger was the other side of the coin. He grew up in the hood. He grew up with gentrification. He
Mm-hmm.
grew up with prejudice. He grew up with racism. He grew up with all of that in America. And all the while, to add insult to injury, he knew there was something better because his father told him that. He knew that there was a utopia. He knew that there was a Wakanda out there. And he also knew that they purposely hid themselves from the rest of the world, which added to his rage and added to his hatred. So you have this character that's so well rounded, and Michael B. Jordan delivers such a good
Yes,
performance.
he did.
He delivers such good, because when he comes in, and it's like Black T'Challa was introduced in Civil War as a fight master, as just this very intelligent, like he's on par with Captain America. He's a titan. And then you have somebody like Killmonger who doesn't have the Panther abilities, but he runs through Wakanda. He runs through it all. His anger drives him to such a degree that he gets to the border. He kills Claw. And what I also liked about the movie, Claw is the traditional arch nemesis of Black Panther. Claw's the man in the comics that killed T'Challa's father.
Mm-hmm.
So what I like is they took one of Black Panther's, one of his other greatest nemesis, because Killmonger in the comics, uh, a lot of what happened in the film happened in the comics. Killmonger, he overthrew T'Challa. He threw T'Challa out of Wakanda. He became Black Panther, and he was ruling Wakanda for a time before T'Challa took the throne back in the comics. They played with that idea, but they made him the main villain. They put Claw to the side, and comic book purists, they'll hate, some of them will hate that because
Mm-hmm.
no, he has such a presence in the no, we're gonna put him to the side. We're gonna focus on Killmonger, and I love that they did that, and I love that he beat the crap out of T'Challa in towards the end of the movie, because and then he explains what he's about to do. He's like, I I took blood from my own people in order to get here. And basically he's implying, if you think for 1 second that you're gonna beat me here, you are sadly mistaken. After everything I've been through, I'm going to eviscerate you. I love Michael B. Jordan's performance in this movie. Love the women in the film. Uh, let's see, Denai Denai Guerrera, as Okoye.
Go ahead.
Okoye. I loved Shuri. What and I remember I was reading, because this is before Infinity War came out, so people were writing a bunch of fan fiction.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people did not like the fact that it was implied that Shuri was probably the most intelligent character in the MCU thus far, and her intelligence beat Bruce Banner's, and her intelligence rivaled Tony Stark's, or it even exceeded Tony Stark's.
Mm-hmm.
So people were writing in fan columns and on YouTube. Oh well, I have this fan fiction where in Infinity War, they come to Wakanda and Shuri's working on this, and Tony Stark comes in. Oh, well, what you did was cute, but I'll take it from here. And I'm like, uh, No,
Yeah.
they properly and naturally explain that this young girl's brilliance, it's not retconned, it's not no it's not Mary Sue, it's not forced. She's intelligent like that. She has that level of intelligence. I love Shuri in the movie. I love that it's implied that if anything happens to T'Challa, she can take over as Black Panther if she really wanted to. I love how, because another thing about this movie, you look at something like a Blade, and I hate to
Mm-hmm.
make it racial, but it is what it is. You look at something like Blade, and you have Whistler. So you have you have his handler, his
Sidekick.
guardian,
Yeah.
sidekick guardian, or whatever, who gives him wisdom. It's it's the white guy. Some you know, a lot of movies where black people are the main characters, and this is where it's going to get slightly controversial, but I do, it's just based on what I've observed.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of movies where black people are the central character, you have to have that sympathetic white character. You have to have that one white character
Mm-hmm.
that helps guide them on their journey, and informs them, and they're better because of this one white character. That's not in Black Panther. I mean, you have
Who else?
yeah, you have Everett Ross, but he doesn't inform T'Challa's journey.
Yeah.
I mean, he's there,
Yeah.
but he's literally a side character. He is he none of the characters, nobody learns anything because of Everett Ross.
Mm-hmm.
They learn they learn because of each other and the other characters as the story progresses. So I love that these characters were able to stand on their own. They were able to learn without having the assistance of the gentle, sympathetic white character in order to get them there. And I
Yeah.
understand that that's a controversial line of thinking, but uh, it's just based on what I've seen in Hollywood for so many years, and then you then you take, and finally in my monologue, just this whole cast of beautiful black actors.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody is doing their thing.
Yes.
What Wakanda, they show Africa in such a beautiful light. You look at we When you look at Hollywood in Africa, and it's normally Africa is viewed as the third world country,
Mm-hmm.
and they're
It's
viewed,
dead.
yeah,
No.
starving
Yes.
children, and it's viewed in a negative light. No, they showed the many cultures of Africa in this movie. So you see you see elements of Zulu, you see elements of Xhosa, you see elements of uh, of Swahili, and various other African nations and tongues that are represented in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
I've talked with various friends who are from Africa. They love this movie because they feel represented and they feel properly represented. It's because I was reading an article. The journalist, like, for years, Africa has been viewed in a negative light, and finally, you have a movie that shows them as royalty, shows them as majestic,
Mm-hmm.
as prestigious. And you show this country, Wakanda, that is not only a thriving country, but technologically speaking, miles ahead of America.
Yeah.
It was such a dope film. So for me, Black Panther is number three. Now, it's not a perfect film. Let me be clear. I do have my issues with it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm for the sake of time, I'm not going to jump into my issues now. But number three on my list was Black Panther. But what was number three on your list?
I'll have to go with give it to another. I feel like it was very underrated and missed. Uh, at Bad Times at the El Royale.
I have heard a lot about this. I have not seen Bad Times at the El Royale yet, but it had a lot of actors and actresses in it that I really like.
Mm, yes, it like I would love this movie. For time's sake, I'm not gonna go too
Mm-hmm.
deep into it, but I feel like that this movie it's it kind of it took me by surprise. I'm like I didn't think it would be as good as I thought it was gonna be.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with the whole cast.
Mm-hmm.
It was unpredictable. also like how the fact of Chris Hemsworth's character is not a character that you would think he would play. You
Yeah,
know, like
yeah.
you should see him. Well, even though in a way he does, he still played the sex symbol.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but he plays this cult leader.
Mm-hmm.
You know, who's very uh, narcissistic,
Mm-hmm.
sadistic. You know, psychopath. Like he's everything. You
Mm-hmm.
know, and like for him, like especially like when you see him, you think of Thor. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, you know he's not as hulking big in this
Mm-hmm.
movie. You know, he's kind of thin,
Mm-hmm.
but still to play this dark character.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I feel like he did a really good job in the role, and I feel like everybody did a pretty good job. And like it kind of felt like a Quentin Tarantino movie. You
Mm-hmm.
know, with the seven like the hateful eight type
Mm-hmm.
situation.
I've
It's
heard that. Yeah.
it's everybody in this
Mm-hmm.
room, and you try to figure out who will survive.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to love it because the black lady survives. You know, her and Chris Bridges, that Chris Bridges,
Jeff Bridges.
Jeff Bridges,
Yeah.
like they make it out the movie, you know, alive.
Mm-hmm.
And usually, it's a cliche in movies.
Mm-hmm.
The black people is the first one to die,
Yeah.
or they don't make it out of the movie,
Yep.
unless you like LL Cool J, you know.
I don't know what it is about him. He has a clause in his contract. LL Cool J has survived great white sharks, Michael Myers, and sadistic serial killers. He has a clause in his contract. He can't die.
You know, but I love the fact that she survives.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all this terror and whatnot.
And she's played by Cynthia Erivo, right? Cynthia
Yes.
Erivo. Yeah, I did not know she could sing like that.
Me either.
Dope voice.
Yes. You know, so but all in all, I like from the way it's written, shots, especially the way how it looks.
Mhm.
It's like this is what I was hoping Hotel Artemis was gonna be.
Oh yeah, okay.
You know.
I see what you're saying.
And Hotel Artemis, Hotel Artemis is one of my most disappointing movies in the last 10 years.
Speaking of which, you should probably make a podcast of the most disappointing movies of the
Yes.
decade because I got a list for that.
Me too. Actually, I had some right here too. I will get mentioned them if we had time, but I don't think we have time.
Mm-hmm.
But I did have a small list.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, like Bad Times at LOL,
Mm-hmm.
love it. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's not a big budget horror
Mhm.
movie. And like they work well with what they had.
Yeah.
And it's an awesome movie.
Yeah.
You know? So what's your number 4?
I'm just gonna touch on this one because I was here when we did the podcast about this. My number 4 is Star Wars: The Force Awakens, but the reason why that's on my list is really because of the experience. Because the Force Awakens that came out, what was that, 2013? No, 2015.
Yes.
2015. Let's see. So the reason why this one is on my 2015. The reason why this one is on my list is because of the experience I had when I saw it in theaters. So, you know, as we alluded to at the beginning, we both work at UPS.
Mm-hmm.
I was at this point I was starting off as a UPS driver, and I had just gotten my first paycheck as a UPS driver, and I bought my ticket for IMAX 3D like a week before. Yeah, like without going into detail, yeah. I bought my ticket ahead of time a week before the movie came out, so I go to IMAX 3D at AMC down in Virginia Beach, and I go see this movie. When I get out there, the line to get into the theater is so long, and I see so many people dressed up as various Star Wars characters. It looks like I'm at a comic convention, and there's just this aura that's going around while you're out there. It's a vibe that you feel when you're out there. It's exciting. Everybody's excited to see this movie because it's the first Star Wars movie in theaters since, you know, Revenge of the Sith, and I don't count the Clone Wars movie, but first movie since Revenge of the Sith. Everybody's excited, and there's a movie I saw called Fanboys. I saw this movie a couple years ago that basically it's a love letter to the Star Wars universe. And
Mm-hmm.
it talks, and it's a movie about a group of dudes that are on this mission. They go on this road trip because they're on this mission to see episode one, The Phantom Menace, because they have a friend that is he's terminally ill from cancer. So they're on a mission to see the movie before he passes away. Um, but it's a love letter to Star Wars. And at the end of the movie, when they get to see the premiere, because their friend has passed away. At the end of the movie, when they get to see the movie, and everybody is cheering when the Star Wars credits start, you know, I was like, I wonder if it's gonna be like that when this movie comes out. And it was. It was exactly like that. The theater went wild when the Star Wars credits came on, and the credit roll started going.
Mm-hmm.
So The Force Awakens makes my top five because it was an experience. Because I've spoken to my parents, I've spoken to many people who saw the original 1977 Star Wars movie in theaters, and they talk about how that was just an out of body experience, seeing something like that had never been done before. And while this is not on the level of A New Hope, it was in many ways for people in my age bracket, we got to experience something at least very similar to that. So Star Wars: The Force Awakens makes my top five because of the experience I had seeing it. But what was your number four?
I would go with. I was kind of torn.
Mm.
I wasn't sure if I want to go with Django or Inglourious Bastards.
Oh, I love Django. I ain't gonna. Just me personally, I will always put Django above, and I love Inglourious Bastards. I will always put Django above it. But yeah, so what was yours?
I, but I think I have to go with Inglourious Bastards. You
I'm
know,
not mad at that though.
like it was a hard choice for me, but I just love Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah.
Like like just from the cast,
Mm-hmm.
the the whole the, like I love war movies,
Mm-hmm.
and I love how even though it is a war movie, so to
Mm-hmm.
say,
Mm-hmm.
like you don't get to see a lot of the war aspects, but it's
Mm-hmm.
what happens like outside of the war, in between the battles,
Mm-hmm.
whatnot, and I just love these characters, and especially Christoph Waltz's character.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he
Mm.
played a awesome bad guy,
Yes, he does.
and from the first scene,
Yeah.
even though it is a long scene,
Mm-hmm.
but like the way he made it unsettling, and
Yes.
all he do is just sit there talking.
And you can feel the tension when
Yes.
he's in the room talking to the dad, and he's having
Mm-hmm.
a conversation. It's like you can feel something is coming.
Yes.
And what really made it unsettling for me is why he's so pleasant. While he's
Mm-hmm.
sitting there talking to him, he's not mean. He's not
Mm-hmm.
menacing. He's a short man, but he holds all the power in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so unsettling watching that scene. And
Yes.
Christoph Waltz was just outstanding in that scene.
Yes. Like all in all, I just love I just love this movie, especially
Mm-hmm.
with the different characters
Mm-hmm.
and the backstories to the
Mm-hmm.
characters, like the Bear Jew,
Yeah.
Hego Sticks.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I for me personally, like I love this movie. Like,
Mm-hmm.
uh, see, for those who don't know, like I I I organize my movies on my shelf in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Like I always be organized them every few months. Like I can look at my shelf and instantly pick out what movie is not there.
Mm-hmm.
So one day I just happened to be sitting on the couch and I noticed something was out of place.
Mm-hmm.
It was Bastards.
Mm-hmm.
And to this day I don't know what happened to it. I couldn't
Mm.
never find it.
Dang.
So I had to go out and buy a new copy.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
which I just bought the Blu-ray for
Mm-hmm.
this time.
Mm-hmm.
I had
Yeah.
the DVD version, but I had when I
Yeah.
upgrade.
Yeah.
But it, like I'm like of all the movies, it had to be Inglourious Bastards.
Yeah.
you know, but yes, what's your number five?
Well, it's interesting that you said Inglorious Bastards because that segues almost perfectly into my number five. My number five was Jojo Rabbit. So Jojo Rabbit, I was a little late to the party
Mm-hmm.
to see this movie, but when I finally saw it, I First of all, what Taika Waititi did, a lot of people viewed it as controversial. I mean, we live in the woke era of social media, so
Yeah.
and instead of giving a film a chance, he did receive some pushback. He received a little bit of backlash because the little boy's imaginary friend is Adolf Hitler. But what I loved about the movie is that it had, number one, for anybody that's a fan of Calvin and Hobbes, the old comic strip where the little kid has a stuffed tiger toy, but it's
Hmm.
his imaginary friend, and you feel the intelligence of that comic strip because Calvin in that comic strip is very intelligent and Hobbes is his companion. For me, this kind of had a Calvin and Hobbes feel to it because you have this little boy who is not, the only thing he knows because of his young age, because of where he was born. The only thing he knows is Auschwitz. He knows the Nazis and being a part of the Hitler Youth, and for him, there's nothing wrong with it. He believes that Hitler is perfectly justified because he's been fed the propaganda that Jews are animals and Jews are evil and Jews need to be eradicated or assimilated. And over the course of the movie, with the help of and I'm gonna get the young lady's name that played um, the young Jew girl that was in his home. Um, with the help of, let's see here, with the oh, okay, Thomason McKenzie. That's the name of the actress. She plays Elsa.
Hmm.
So with the help of Elsa, he learns rather reluctantly, because what I love is his character growth. This little boy's character growth. It doesn't happen quickly. It happens literally over the course of the entire film.
Hmm.
He goes from believing everything that he's been spoon fed about Jews to seeing the hypocrisy and seeing the stupidity of the Nazi regime. And also, my hats off to the young lady that played Elsa, the 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 young Jewish girl in the movie, because she delivered. I remember looking at an interview, and she said that she was studying like Anne Frank, and she was
Hmm.
going through history to get ready for the role. And Taika Waititi literally is like, okay, forget all that. Look at Heather's. So he was like, he gave her the movie Heather's. He's like, look at that. That's your prep for the movie. And I could see it. She was snarky. She she um she was so sarcastic. She would call little Jojo out on all his stupidity, and he didn't know that she was calling. A lot of the stuff that she was saying was going over his head.
Hmm.
And like, there's one scene where he's making fun of her, and he's basically like, "Oh well, Nazis are naturally stronger than Jews," and that. And she puts him in a headlock, and then she was like, "All right, Nazi, break out of it. Since you're stronger than us, break out." And she was like, She was like, "We fought. We were the chosen people, and we fought with angels, and we were there." And like the way that she delivered this monologue, I was like, "Dang, this girl is killing it." It was it was dope. And without giving any spoilers, I understand there's some people that have not seen this film yet.
Me.
It has a lot of heart. And there is one scene. I'm not gonna give anything away.
Hmm.
Just watch the shoes. Pay attention to the shoes. Anybody that's seen this film gets exactly what I'm saying. Pay attention to the shoes. Scarlett Johansson's performance, great. It is great in the movie. It is wonderful in the movie. Let's see. Sam Rockwell's performance. I loved Sam Rockwell in the movie. He's And what I love is that his character is fully, it comes full circle at the end of the movie, and you finally get some things about his character towards the end. Sam Rockwell delivers a great performance. Alfie Allen is good in the movie. Um, Taika Waititi is just comedy gold as Adolf Hitler. But again, Roman Griffin Davis, who plays Little Jojo, Thomas and McKenzie, of course they're the breakouts. They killed it, and it was one of my favorite movies because it really did make me feel something. And it's the spoonful, of sugar method. Helping the medicine go down, because
Hmm.
Taika Waititi was dealing with a very touchy, very serious, very emotional subject for a lot of people. but he handled it with grace and he handled it with respect. He did not disrespect this history. What he did was he, through comedy, through humor,
Mm-hmm.
he showed you the hypocrisy and he showed you the stupidity of the Nazi regime. He showed you that using humor and showing respect for the source material. So I really like this movie. It completed my top 5 movies of the decade. And Taika Waititi, man's gonna go on to do some great things.
Yeah.
He's gonna go on to do some great things. So that's my 5th movie of the decade. And so, what was your number 5 of the decade?
Yeah. So my number 5, it would have to. I have to go with Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
Mm, that was a good movie.
Because like I feel like it was one of the few Marvel movies, like up to this point,
Mm,
that didn't really feel like a superhero movie.
mm-hmm.
You know, uh, like I love how the Russell brothers made it more of a thriller, political like a
Mm-hmm.
political thriller.
Yeah.
Versus just it's Captain America. It's it's Marvel.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I love the whole espionage behind behind the movie, whatnot. And even though for me, I know the Winter Soldier was Bucky, but from watching it in theaters, I feel like a lot of people didn't
Mm-hmm.
do that,
Mm-hmm.
and the surprise came like when like I remember when the mask came off and the whole theater like, oh my god,
Mm-hmm.
like wait,
Mm-hmm.
like is that Bucky? But like I love how they revealed the character and made it kind of made everything personal for Cap,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I just like all in all, I just I love I just love the feel of the movie. I
Yeah.
feel like I love like I know a lot of people give Marvel movies flack about
Yeah.
it being over the top.
Yeah.
It's just theme park movies.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, but like, I love how they made it so it doesn't feel like that.
Yeah.
You still get the high flying action,
You do.
but you also get the emotion
Mm-hmm.
and good cinema.
Yeah.
You know,
Because you got something like you have a movie like The Dark Knight
mm-hmm.
that pushed superhero films in another stratosphere, and they put in it, and Christopher Nolan took it to another level.
Yes.
And to your point, I feel like Winter Soldier kind of picked up that baton
Mm-hmm.
and kept pushing it forward. Because what Winter Soldier and The Dark Knight showed is that these movies can be more than just superheroes in tights
Mm-hmm.
and big comic booky villains trying to take over the world or destroy the world and stuff
Yes.
like that. No, they can have substance and
Mm-hmm.
they can have twists and they can have plots that weave in and out and go in all types of directions and make you think and shock you and awe you.
Yes.
Because the way that they took Hydra, and
Mm-hmm.
and as a comic book fan, I know some things here and there about Hydra. For me personally, I always thought that Hydra was like a very big comic booky villain organization like Cobra from G.I. Joe or the Legion of Doom or something
Uh-huh.
like that from the Justice League. It's just a big comic booky organization. But what they did, which was inspired from more modern comics of Hydra, what they did with Hydra, how they made it this very deep political organization
Mm-hmm.
whose goal was world domination. But when you look at how they were going about trying to gain world domination, it's not a villain sitting on a throne doing maniacal laughter.
Yeah.
It's about control. They wanted to control everything, and the way that the Russo brothers weaved that out and explained it and showed it was just a masterclass. It was
Yeah.
masterful. Winter Soldier was great.
Yeah, especially how it's revealed that Hydra and Shield was kind of one and the same.
Exactly.
And like you didn't know who was who,
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. And like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I just love how they set it up,
Yeah.
and it kind of made and it it kind of made it where it felt like Cap's all Cap's actions in the past was absolute, and like it made it null and void, because like I did all that for what, just for
Yeah.
him to rise back up
Yeah.
and take over the organization that
Yeah.
pretty much I inspired,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and I'm pretty much working for Hydra right now,
Mm-hmm.
so I love how they interweave that and then bring back my best friend
Yeah.
who is now a assassin,
Yeah. I like that. I also like that in the beginning of Winter Soldier, while it's clear Nick Fury's not a bad guy, I like that that Steve is really calling out the holes in the hypocrisy of his belief system.
Yeah.
When Nick Fury shows him the helicarriers underground, and he was like, "This is not preemptive measures. This is fear.
Yeah.
This is fear of losing control of the status quo." And at the end of the movie, when Captain America tells him, "No, it's all got to go. Shield and Hydra, we got to start from scratch. All of this has to go because there's blame on both sides.
Yeah.
And I hate saying on both sides for obvious reasons. And I understand it's a political film, but here, unlike in the past, it actually makes sense when he says it. There is blame to be had on both sides, on Shield's side, and of course on Hydra's side. So when when Steve is telling him, no, it's all got to go. The writing supported that. And then the way that this film uh, gracefully and properly and narratively just proficiently goes into Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
How it leads into Civil War, which then leads into Infinity War and so on and such forth. How you get to that point where you eventually get to Civil War where both sides, Iron Man and Captain America, they both have points.
Yeah.
You can go either way. Like you can choose Cap's side, but no one's gonna fault you. You can choose Iron Man's side, but fans aren't gonna fault you. That is awesome writing. That is awesome storytelling, and it all came from Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
When the Russo brothers decided we're not just gonna make a superhero movie, we're going to make a good film that happens to have superheroes in it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. So that was my number 5. I know we can go on and on and on and on and on and on. When but just to give 1 or 2 honorable mentions, I want to throw in the Cabin in the Woods.
Yeah. that pokes fun at the horror movies.
Yes.
Yeah.
And also I want to give A Quiet Place as well.
Oh, yes.
I feel like they did something with the horror genre that no one else tried to do. And make a silent film. Whoever thought a silent horror film would be good.
Yeah. For my honorable mentions, I throw out Django. Django was just that's I compare that to when like once again I'm gonna get a little bit controversial here. It's just like how when people why can't I say the N word? Why can't I? You just can't say it.
Yeah.
Okay. Is how you feel when you tell them that you just can't say it because you can't. It's not yours. That feeling you get when you tell somebody that it's a guilty pleasure. It's not necessarily right, but it's a guilty pleasure. That's how I feel about Django. Django was a guilty pleasure. I enjoyed that movie 9 times out of 10 for a lot of the wrong reasons, but I still enjoyed that film. So Django, and my final honorable mention is probably my final honorable mention. I would probably give Avengers, the first Avengers movie, because that was just a wonderful time at the movies. That was an ensemble superhero film done right. That's what Justice League or other ensemble or the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. It's like they finally came to the forefront. Like, this is how you do it. This is how we do it. This is how you get it done. So those are my 2 honorable mentions.
Yes. Well, it was an honor to have you back on the podcast.
It was an honor to be
You
here.
know, maybe next time we could do the top five most disappointed movies.
Oh, yes. Yes. And I'm going to tell you right now, we do it. My man who directed the original Alien films, I got a bone to pick with him. I got a bone to pick with him.
Whew. I could probably know why.
Oh,
I think I
yes.
know why.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah, Ridley Scott, I am coming for you, sir. I'm definitely coming for you.
But until then, that will do it for today's podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Well, actually, like this video. You can share this video and subscribe to our channel. You know, you can hit that notification button down below, and also you can go and check out Green Cloud Films. That's where I post a lot of all short films done by Green Cloud, and you can check out Film Nerds on Twitter at Film Nerds One, and on Facebook at Film Nerds Podcast. I don't think you have any social media accounts no more, do you?
Not right now. I am considering coming back, but as of right now, I'm jacked out in the matrix, so to speak. So
Gotta unplug sometimes.
yeah.
But until then, I've been James. This has been Herman.
Yes, sir.
We see you next time.